In the old quarter of Miran Bazaar, where roofs of stitched tarpaulins held back the sun like cupped hands, a man named Rafiq sold sacks of rice and lentils. He had built his stall from nothing, so he would tell anyone who listened and polish the brass weights of his balance scale every morning until they flashed like coins. People said his grains were clean and his tongue was sharp. Rafiq liked the first compliment and used the second like a whip. His wife, Zoya, had not always been blind. Fever took her sight 2 years before, and with it went the surety of her steps and the secret glances that had once softened Rafiq's temper. Still, she moved with a cane and a quiet map in her head, counting paces, reading air. When she sat by the stall, threading beads or mending cloth bags, she drew customers who trusted a home where patience lived. It was not lost on Rafiq that sales were better when Zoya smiled in the direction of a voice and asked, "Would you like a measure for today or for the week?" But he didn't give patience its due. He wanted the world to hurry and make way for him. The market had a rhythm. Goats tugging at ropes, hawkers calling recipes with their prices, the clean ring of iron when Master Arif, the elderly scalekeeper, tested everyone's measures at dawn. There was also a rhythm under the rhythm, a drum beat no musician played. Pride, it walked with Rafiq like a shadow with elbows. Pride whispered when Rafiq's rival, Yakub the spice seller, boasted of cardamom from the hills. Pride hissed when a poor widow asked for a handful to be rounded up, and Rafiq pretended not to hear. Pride pressed hardest when Zoya touched his arm in public to find her place. On the day it happened, the bazaar swelled with visitors. The mango harvest had come early, and the air wore sweetness like a scarf. Rafiq's coins were heavy in his pocket. Zoya came, as she always did, to sit by him and stitch loops on the grain sacks, the lane outside clogged with customers and ox carts. A municipal officer warned everyone to keep the passage clear. "Move her," Pride said inside Rafiq's ear. "People are watching." "She's in the way." Zoya tapped forward, listening for the edge of the stall mat. A child behind her bumped and apologized. Rafiq's cheeks burned. Were they smiling at him, at her? He chose quickly, badly, and forever. He lifted his foot and kicked his blind wife on the ankle. "Watch where you're going," he hissed. Zoya stumbled, caught herself with both hands, and the market went silent, the way a lake stills when a bird's shadow passes over it. The silence broke into thin, sharp words. "What are you doing, Rafiq?" cried Bibi Dania, the tea seller with wrists like ropes. "Have you no honour?" said someone else. The municipal officer stopped mid-note. A boy ran to steady Zoya's elbow. Rafiq's mouth opened and closed. Pride tried to argue. Accident. She was in the way, but even Pride was embarrassed by how cheap the words sounded. From across the lane, Master Arif, whose scales certified the honesty of every vendor, raised his hand. The crowd parted as if the old man were pushing a gate. "Daughter," Arif said to Zoya, "sit." Water, he took her cane and placed it carefully by the mat, then turned to Rafiq. "Son, our market measures more than grain." "I didn't," Rafiq began. "Be quiet," said Bibi Dania, who had earned the right to be rude by serving the strongest tea to the toughest mouths. Zoya found her breath. She sat, hands folded in her lap, the picture of a woman who refused to tip over. "I am not broken," she said, "but I am not safe." A murmur rose, shame, anger, pity, each a small river that might flood if fed. Master Arif cleared his throat. "We have a custom older than any of us," he said. "On days when a great wrong troubles our lanes, we ask the market to judge. Not in court, where laws sleep in books, but here, where our steps make rules alive. There is a folk test for such a time, kept in my custody since the days of my teacher." He reached into his satchel and drew out a small round disc of hammered tin on a leather cord. "We call it the eye of the market." Some laughed nervously. Others leaned in. The eye is not magic, Arif added. It reminds. Whoever wears it and speaks before the people feels what others feel when they listen. If one's words are clean, the disc sits calm and warm. If one's words are twisted, it grows heavy and cold. He looked at Zoya. Daughter, do you ask for judgment? Zoya folded her hands more tightly, as if holding a bird that might fly off. I ask not to punish, she said, but to make the walking safer for those who cannot see. But before we make any rule, let truth stand up in front of everyone. The crowd pressed in like hands to a fire. Arif lifted the cord and motioned to Rafiq. Rafiq squared his shoulders. He could refuse. Pride said he should, but pride also said refusing would look like guilt. Fine, he snapped, slipping the eye over his head. It lay at his breastbone like a new coin. He faced the people and said, It was an accident. There was no kick. My foot moved. That is all. The disc turned cold. Rafiq felt it as the sudden lack a man feels when he reaches for his pocket and finds it empty. The skin beneath the tin ached. He shivered though the day was hot. Speak plainly, Arif said. Rafiq swallowed. I touched her with my foot, he muttered. Touched, the crowd answered like a single mouth. Say the word, Bibi, Dania said, or leave our market altogether. Rafiq's jaw clenched. I kicked her, he said at last, face hot. The eye warmed at the truth, which only increased his shame. Zoya breathed out. Thank you, she said to the old man. Now I ask a stranger thing, not punishment, not yet. I ask the market to borrow my darkness for a little while. No one understood. Zoya stood, her cane in hand. Tie a strip of cloth around your eyes. Only for 3 minutes. Only those who agree, she said, lifting her scarf. And try to walk the lane from the tea seller's kettle to the mango cart. Keep your baskets, keep your children's hands. Listen to the voices, the beasts, the wheels. Then remove your cloth and tell me where safety lives. That is foolishness, someone said. I'll try, said the boy who had steadied her. He tore a strip from his ragged shirt and tied it around his head. Bibi Dania did the same with her apron. Master Arif, eyes bright with curiosity, wrapped the leather cord of the eye across his brows until the disc covered one closed eyelid. A dozen more followed. Some for empathy, some for sport, some because the story had carried them like a river and they wanted to see where it went. 3 minutes, Zoya said. Start now. A woolen hush fell. People with covered eyes reached out, clumsy at first. The boy held his hands ahead like a crab and laughed. The laugh slid away when an ox snorted nearby, and the beast's breath drenched his wrist. Wheels creaked, someone barked, metal clinked. The ground, so familiar a moment ago, turned into a riddle whose answers were always moving. Rafiq did not cover his eyes. He stood aside, angry that anyone had agreed to such theatre. Pride whispered, They will step on the tea seller's pots. They will crash into Yaqub's spices. This will be a mess, and they will blame her. Yet as the blindfolded moved, the lane itself obeyed their caution. Those who could see lifted baskets, took the hands of those who could not. One led a stranger around a sleeping dog. The municipal officer, feeling duty at last, planted himself between the ox and the uncertain. Then, because the market was a living thing and loved its drama, a twist arrived. A sudden hot wind shouldered through the tarpaulins. It plucked at Rafiq's awning, the one he had hung with the cheapest twine to save a few coins, and the knots, bragging every morning they were strong enough, chose that moment to admit their lies. The awning's edge yanked free, smacked the top of a sack, and a red river of lentils burst across the mat, spread to the lane, and rolled like seeds escaping a greedy palm. The blindfolded felt the grains underfoot as marbles and slipped. I've got you, cried the boy, grabbing the arm of a woman he didn't know. Bibi Dania planted her feet and braced 2 swaying men as if they were kettles. Master Arif, eyes still covered, held his hands out and called, "Grains underfoot." "Slow steps, hold shoulders, not wrists," Rafik swore and reached to stop the spill. He was fast. He had always been fast. But for the first time he saw, truly saw, how helpless someone was when a hazard lay invisible. Zoya took 3 taps with her cane and located the mouth of the torn sack by sound alone, then pressed the cloth against it with the calm of an expert nurse. "Hold it here," she told her husband. "Put your hand on mine." Rafik did. Her hand was cool. His shook. 3 minutes ended in a chorus of relieved sighs as cloths came off faces and the world returned. The lane rearranged itself, embarrassed and proud, like a child reciting a poem. Zoya turned to the people. "This is my revenge," she said quietly, and the words startled everyone because it did not sound like revenge. "I wanted you to feel what I feel each day, even in places that claim to love me. I wanted you to understand how small a shove or a kick can become a cliff." Master Arif, still holding the eye at his chest, nodded slowly. "I felt foolish and afraid," he admitted. "I am old and I know the market's music, but without sight I stepped on the wrong beat. I learned faster with a hand on my elbow." Bibi Dania wiped her eyes with her tea-stained sleeve. "I kept thinking, what if the pot is just to my left?" I moved like Water Yakub, the spice seller, whose pride was a cousin to Rafik's, raised his hand. "I will paint a white line along the stall fronts," he declared, "a path clear of jars and stools. Let the lane nearest the shops be for those who need steady walls." The municipal officer, surprised to find good ideas in the mouths of merchants, quickly agreed. "By order of the Bazaar Committee," he said, seizing an authority that no one had yet offered, "we establish the 3 steps rule. The first 3 steps of every stall front must stay clear for elders, children, and those with canes." "Not enough," said Zoya, her voice soft but not small. "Rafik's awning fell because he tied it with bad string to save money. That is a hazard, and hazard is a cousin of harm. Let there be a safety weighing along with the grain weighing. Master Arif will certify rope and knots. Tea kettles and carts will be checked. We will pay his fee from a box we fund together. I will seed that box with my wedding bangles." The crowd gasped. Gold was gold, and bangles were memories you could wear. Rafik flinched as if struck. "Zoya, no," he whispered. "Keep them." "They shine better," she said, "as light in the market than as suns in a drawer." Master Arif's eyes shimmered. "I accept, but double it," he announced. "I will donate the eye of the market to this same box. Let it be worn at every new rules reading." Yakub shrugged and tugged a purse from his belt. "I add the price of a sack of cardamom," he said, trying to turn generosity into advertisement and failing. Generosity made its own song. Others came forward, a few coins from the boy, a square of good rope from a cartman, a clean brush from the sign painter to paint the white line. Only Rafik stood still, feeling the ground tilt in a way the eye could not measure. Pride wanted a speech that put the world back together. "I was provoked. The market overreacts. It's all theatre." But pride had slipped during the wind and landed on the lentils. It was sitting somewhere, rubbing its shins and sulking. Zoya turned to her husband, not as a judge, but as a person who had once practiced forgiveness as a daily craft. "As for you," she said, "I ask one thing. It is not prison, not fine. It is a job." Rafik raised his chin, wary. "Every afternoon for a season," Zoya said, "you will leave your stall to a helper, and you will walk the white line as a guide. Your right hand will be free, your left will be offered to anyone who asks. You will lead elders, children, and those whose eyes are dim across the teeth and tongues of this market. You will tie ropes that hold in the wind. You will be their eyes until your own learn to see." "That's bigger than a fine," someone muttered appreciatively. Rafik felt dozens of gazes weigh him more closely than any scale. He wanted to snarl. He wanted to say he had no need of such theatre. But the truth was a stone he could not spit out. When the lentils ran like marbles and the awning snapped free, it had been Zoya's hand, steady as a post in a river, that kept him on his feet. The steadiness lived in her before blindness, and had not been evicted by it. He bowed his head, a posture unfamiliar to his bones. "I will do it," he said. The eye warmed like a small sun. Word travelled as it does in markets, faster than carts, slower than regret, but quicker than forgiveness. By evening, the white lines began to appear, a wavering path that would straighten with tomorrow's sun. The safety weighing box, heavy with bangles and coins, sat under Master Arif's stool, and Rafik, the man who had kicked his blind wife at noon, led home an old shepherd whose eyes had turned to milk, guiding him with a patience that surprised his own hands. The revenge, if that was the right word, shook everyone, not because a man was ruined, but because a market was changed. Seasons are teachers with long syllables. As weeks rolled into months, the white lines gathered footprints and scuffs, and the safety. Weighing became as ordinary as haggling. Arif checked kettles for wobbles and ropes for truth. The municipal officer, who learned to listen before he blew his whistle, kept chalk in his pocket and added lines where the lanes pinched. Bibi Dania moved her second bench back a hand's breadth, and discovered customers stood longer for tea when they had space to swing their feet. Yakub found that people bought more spice when they could lean on the painted wall and imagine stew. As for Rafik, he kept his promise. At first he guided grudgingly, a clock disguised as a man. He offered his arm and counted steps the way he counted rice. 1 measure, 2 measures, enough. But something tilted in him with each hand he steadied. A grandmother taught him the trick of listening for the echo of his own footsteps to judge wall distance. A child taught him to narrate what he saw, left now, a cart stacked with melons like moons, and he discovered that saying it made him notice it. He learned to watch the sky over the tarpaulins for the warning wrinkle that meant wind, and to tighten knots without being asked. He learned the names of the dogs. He learned that sight was only one kind of seeing. At his stall, his scale became a place of small amends. When the poor widow returned, he said, "I will round up your measure without you asking." She raised an eyebrow in disbelief, then nodded in a way that said, "We'll see how long this new song lasts." It lasted. Zoya, for her part, did not make a shrine of that day. She spoke of it when it served the next necessary thing, and let it sleep when it did not. She stitched loops on sacks and traced the white line with her cane every morning, smiling at its chipped paint as if it were a familiar friend who told the same story badly, but faithfully. When someone thanked her for the change, she said, "Thank the market." We borrowed each other's senses and returned them in better condition. One afternoon, wind walked the roofs again. Rafik, who now kept good rope and better habits, checked his awning without being told. He found a frayed end and replaced it. Across the lane, a new vendor, green as limes, had tied his cloth with thin string. "Friend," Rafik called, tossing a coil, "take this." The wind doesn't haggle. The young man caught the rope, grateful. Zoya heard the exchange and laughed. "The market weighs more than grain," she said, echoing Master Arif's old line. Pride still lived in Rafik, as pride lives in anyone who has survived hunger and found a way to push back. But pride had learned manners. It did not elbow Zoya when she touched her husband's arm. It stood quietly to the side as Rafik discovered a heavier kind of satisfaction, the kind that made his shoulders lighter. On the day the council decided to make the safety, weighing a permanent office, complete with a ledger, a stamp, and a board listing the rules, Master Arif insisted Rafik speak. The eye of the market hung from the old man's palm like a small moon on a string. Rafik put it on and felt its cool against his skin. Not a scold now, but a reminder. I once thought a market was a place to turn weight into coins, he said. Now I think it is a place to turn strangers into neighbours. The eye sat warm. I once thought guiding was a chore taken from my time. Now I know guiding is a path that returns me to myself. He turned to Zoya, not theatrically, not to collect applause, but because some words require witness. I am sorry, he said, not for the first time, not for the last, but with a steadiness that made apologies less like coins and more like bread. You taught me to see with more than my eyes. Zoya reached for his hand and found it immediately, as if there had always been a white line between them. We taught the market together, she said, and the murmurs around them were not gossip now, but agreement. That evening, the boy who had first tied cloth over his eyes came by with a small gift. A smooth length of wood he had carved into a guiding stick, round and strong, with the word neighbour burned into the handle. Rafik ran his thumb over the letters and felt the grain of the word itself. In Moran Bazaar, stories are a form of currency, and some spend better than gold. The tale of the kick that became a walkway passed under tarps and over roofs, down alleys and up staircases, changing shape slightly as water changes to fit its jar. Some told it as the miracle of the eye. Others told it as the day the wind judged cheap twine. Most told it as the afternoon when a blind woman showed a whole market how to see. When children ran too fast, their elders pointed to the white line and said, "Mind the steps." When vendors argued prices, they checked their weights and then, almost automatically, their ropes. When anyone asked why, the answer came like a proverb, because we walk in each other's dark sometimes. Power without care is a kind of blindness. Care is a lamp that lets everyone see. Today, choose one small place you move through, a home, a workplace, a street, and make it safer for the ones who cannot see what you see. Tell this tale to someone who needs reminding, and walk the next 3 steps as if another's hand rests on your arm.